Okay, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us today. Welcome to today's webcast, our sixth annual State of Resource Management Address. My name is Thomas Meredith. I'm the Vice President of Marketing, and I will be moderating today's webinar. And we're also very excited to have Randy Mislovic with us, the Managing Director of the RMI. He's going to be presenting today's webcast. So I do want to take just a moment and thank everyone for joining us today. Most of us have started to work from home and things are probably feeling a little different, or we might be, juggling a couple different things. So I want to thank you all for coming today and sitting in on our State of Resource Management address as we dive into our perspectives and research around resource management. We are scheduled for 60 minutes today. So let me answer just a few, or let me address just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording the webinar. I'm not sure, some of you might be familiar, some of you might not, but GoToWebinar has been having some issues over the past few weeks, I think, as folks transition to working from home. So if there's an issue, if you happen to drop off the line or there's an issue with your connection, we are recording and we'll get that link out to you and you can listen to it at your convenience. We have also made a PDF copy of the deck available on your handouts window panel there in GoToWebinar. You can download that if you choose. And we are going to have a Q&A session at the end. I'll be moderating that with Randy. So again, excited to have everyone on the line. We've got a big crowd today for the State of Resource Management address. So let me get out of the way and let's get started. As I mentioned, presenting today's webcast is Randy Mislovic, Managing Director of the RMI. Randy, welcome, excited to have you, and I'll hand it off to you.
Excellent. Thomas, let me do a quick sound check, and we have started the recording, correct?
That is correct, and the audio sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Well, welcome to the sixth annual State of Resource Management from the Resource Management Institute. This is Randy Mislovic. I'm very excited to share with you a lot of new information that is coming through our research in this important area of resource management. I'd like to take this moment to thank our sponsors, Keyed In and MavenLink, for sponsoring this particular event. I would also say both these companies have been very supportive of the RMI since our inception, and really shows their commitment to helping us and the industry with improving the discipline of resource management. So thanks again to Keyed In and MavenLink. We are today joined by literally hundreds of project-based workers and people from professional consulting services, marketing agencies, enterprise IT organizations, product development teams, and other project-based organizations. So we're really excited for this. We're going to break all records today with the number of attendees at this annual event. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we thank all of you, our members, and some of you who are not yet members for participating, and we hope this hour will be valuable to you. I certainly would be remiss if I didn't take a moment and wish the very best to anyone who's been impacted by the COVID-19 situation that we're all trying to get past, as particularly anyone who's had health issues or their families with health issues. Our best wishes to them for quick recoveries, and I think as a globe, we're all trying to deal with this, and hopefully we'll get past this as quickly as possible. So the great news is we can do this from the safety of our homes, and I'm really excited again to share a lot of information with you. So our agenda today, I'll give you a very brief reminder of the RMI and the RM community, and some brief perspectives on resource management. And then I'll dive into the meat of this presentation today around observations, research, and best practices for resource management. And I'll recap with some tools that you can use in a wrap up, and then we're going to take Q&A. And I really recommend you hang around, because there's always great questions. This is our biggest broadcast of the year, and it's always a lot of great topics that come up. So let me start by, for those of you not familiar with us, I'll just do a quick recap. If you go to www.resourcemanagementinstitute.com, you can see and learn more about us there. In a nutshell, we are dedicated to the advancement of resource and workforce management thought leadership and all things related to that. And, if you look through our website or if you've been involved with this, you know that we spend a lot of time on best practice definition. We're going to share some of those with you today. Market research, and a lot of the content today comes out of both past and current market research. We've got a big library of white papers. We've got training and a world-class certification program for resource management. And of course, we run lots of events. These on a quarterly basis, we run our power-up sessions, which are half-hour topical broadcasts. Those are all recorded and available, by the way, for free from the website. And we have an annual symposium, which I'll talk about at the end of this. Resource management really affects us in four ways: at a high level, project performance, resource utilization, customer satisfaction, and employee engagement. And so we deal with all four of those things and a lot more when it relates to what the Institute is focused on. We have more than 530 member companies and growing. We're over 100% growth last year and the year prior. And I will tell you that we are on an accelerating pace this year. So we're rethinking whether or not we can get to greater than 100% this year. We ran our second symposium last year. For those of you who are with us in Dallas, thanks for being there with us. We're going to be there again this year. I presume we are past the COVID-19 thing by then, but our second event drew 138 people from 10 countries and 67 companies, and just had a great event together with a lot of good sharing. And as I said, there are four domains we really focus on: PS and consulting services, enterprise IT, product development, and marketing agencies is the latest domain we've added to the list. But essentially, if you're in a project-based business, you'll get value from what the RMI can contribute to your efforts. And we're focused on these four big problems that you're focused on as a part of your everyday business. Project performance, which today from a variety of sources runs at 35 to 40% failure rates, utilization, customer satisfaction, another area of focus that's impacted by resource management, and employee satisfaction. And there's reasons for each one of these, but when it comes to project performances, over the last 20 to 25 years, the industry's made very little progress on improving project performance, and we would contend that's largely because of weak resource management processes. More to come in this broadcast on that. 1% of anybody's labor base, and what that's worth to you in a year, improving utilization by 1, 2, 3, 4 percentage points is usually worth a ton of money to the bottom line. If your projects don't go well, your customers are not happy. And certainly resource management holds not all the answers, but certainly some of the answers for better employee engagement. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today as well. If you haven't been to our website, I'll just start with the upper right-hand corner. It's real simple. Just click on join, give us an email, a little bit of information, and you get behind the firewall with that. And you get access to all kinds of things to allow you to collaborate through our forums, participate in our events, listen to past events and the recordings that are available. You can help work on innovation in your business through the various insights that we have from our surveys, our best practice information, white paper library, and of course the RMCPs who have graduated through our certification program get an even broader toolkit. And last but not least is our ability to opportunities to educate you through not only our certification program, but we have an intro to RM class. We're going to be introducing later on this year our advanced RM course, and then of course our global symposium, which is currently planned for September 24th and 5th in Dallas, Texas. So with that, let me dive into some quick perspectives, and I will start to share here a lot of data points. We are very data driven at the Institute, and we've been doing surveys since 2016, our inception. I think we're running our 12th or 13th survey that are each followed by a research report and various things related to resource management, where we have trending data, because we are now enough years into where we're doing some of these surveys and following up to see what the trends are. So you'll see some of that today as well. The inhibitors to resource management, I'll just start at a very high level. Three things that really jump off the page is maintaining and retaining dedicated and skills resource managers. Look at the big jump from 2018 to 2020. We would contend that's got a lot to do with the growth and focus of the industry on resource management as a domain that was ignored for our discipline. It was ignored too long. So a lot of demand in that area. Not a lot of change in process design or implementation, but we think that will start to decline as more organizations move to standardization of a process. We think that's going to be just-in-time resourcing, the solution that the Institute provides. And lastly, automation tools. And we're clearly seeing the data says that the vendors are listening to the Institute about things that we think are deficiencies in the tools that serve you and our members, and they're certainly listening to you as well. And the one thing we're seeing from the research is the automation tools are getting better and better at that. So we'll dive into that. So reasons why are these areas a problem? Many of you have heard me speak before is that, just because you have a good project management process doesn't mean you have a good resource management process. And so one of the reasons why project performance failure rates are so high is because typically we find that if there's project performance failures, the failure to get the right person in the right place at the right moment of time tends to be the overwhelming first reason why organizations fail at their projects. Second, are in process education. Build a process, getting people standardized in that process, particularly global companies, really, really important that you do that. Turnover of skilled RM resources. Resource managers are in very high demand today. Over the last 10 years, this discipline has really started to grow. In the last 2 years, it has absolutely exploded. And so there's a lot of contention for these skilled resources today. Insufficient automation. I'll say it again that automation tool vendors have made lots of progress over the last 3 or 4 years, and our data says that. And I'll identify today where there are still areas for improvement. And then lastly is project allocation methods as it relates to employee satisfaction and retention. Is the industry has for so long been focused on trying to get people aligned with work and doing that effectively, but not always necessarily have as a priority in their algorithms what is our workers want to do, what's important to them, what's important to their careers. So we've all got to get better at how do we find better balance between project allocation to open work to be done and the things that drive our employees to want to stay with our companies. And then the last is a point of perspective that I want to share with you is just-in-time resourcing. This is a 6-element a solution that we developed a long time ago to how you solve, in a process-based way, resource management challenges. And it's made up of these 6 things: building a better skills inventory that you draw from, combining that with a great forecast, and then having some kind of a staffing algorithm that combines, the base of who I have, where they are, what competencies they have, with a forecast to develop my gaps, focus on those gaps with sourcing and development programs. And then, of course, obviously, I have a staffing algorithm that helps me staff current projects. These things get automated, this process get automated by some good PSA or PPM or RPM tool. And then, of course, like any good process, we have good governance with metrics and the continuous improvement. And we think this whole approach is we're trying to drive process standardization in the industry. The process is documented. We have standardized training for it, community support, and it allows you to get up and running quickly as possible. So, in our library of tools, you will find over the years, we've been building a library of best practices. And these 10 are on the list here. I'm not going to go through the list of 10. You're going to get a copy of this. It's in a PDF form. We've published a lot of this pieces of this in the past, but I'm going to come back to some of these processes, best practices, as I go through our data today, and talk to you about not only what the data tells us, but where the problem areas are, but what do you do about how do you fix it? So these 10 things, I'm going to refer to quite a few of these, and we are continuously building this library of best practices. These are just 10 of those. There are many others in our library, and would encourage you to look at those in your own time. So okay, so RMGS, the Resource Management Global Symposium in Dallas last October, I shared at our State Resource Management in our opening keynote a lot of research that had been done that year. And what I want to do is just talk about what's changed. What have we learned that's new since last October? And just a quick reminder that we serve 4 particular domains and that are all project-based organizations. Those that serve external customers like professional and consulting services, marketing and creative agencies, or those that serve external customers. Those that serve internal customers like enterprise IT, shared IT services, product development organizations. And of course, if you're in any project-based business, you could be a construction company, or you could be perhaps a law firm or an accounting firm. If you're doing project-based work, you can gain value from an association with the Resource Management Institute. And as I mentioned, pretty much most of our things that are available through the website are free, and all you got to do is join as a member. So let me dive into 5 observations that will comprise most of what I'm going to talk with all of you about today. And I'll start with number 1, is developing and implementing effective RM processes remains a challenge. And this is a place where we have the advantage of having some trending data. Now, we did change what we are tracking. There's currently a survey that's open on inhibitors, and so this data on this particular page is preliminary findings from that. We had enough responses where we felt that the data was statistically valid, but when we conclude that survey here at the end of March, we'll publish a report on that. But these are the things that you're telling us are still issues as it relates to process development. About a third say our processes are not effectively or properly designed, about a third not effectively implemented, a little more than a third that we didn't combine it with good process training, and then a lot of you said it's a combination of some of these things or maybe other factors that were affecting you. So you can start to think of this, benchmarking is always a wonderful thing to do in businesses that are committed to continuous improvement. We are trying to provide lots of benchmark data for organizations across these various project-based domains. Our surveys, by the way, I'll just back up for just a moment, you'll find that our surveys, we do have data that's specific to each of these 4 domains. So if you're a marketing creative agency, we're starting to collect data for those. Our base obviously is bigger in PS and CS since we've been at that for a lot longer, but we'll continue to grow the base of that. Okay, so let me go back to that. So those are the process inhibitors that we have. Anyway, so let me go to the next page on process priorities. This is where we do have some great trending data to talk about it, and where people are putting their time, energy, and investment as it relates to process improvement in resource management. So some growth in skills inventory and a little bit of decline in forecasting. I'll just say that since 2016, building an effective and managing effective skills inventory and effective forecasting have been consistently the top of the list of things that people struggle with. And I'll come back to both of those points and some best practices there. Project staffing, an issue in some cases, although starting to get better at that. Skills development and sourcing, we're getting better data, better gap information to allow us to start getting better at that. And they're roughly the same in the governance area. So anyway, that's a quick update on that. As it relates to training and support, is about 2/3 of you are doing your training with in-house materials. A growing number of you are coming to the Institute and just getting standardized training there with a standardized process from us. Again, the one thing I would hope that nobody does is what I see in the next page that says we don't train our resource managers, and that's a troubling trend. But our belief is that simply because the number of resource managers is growing so rapidly, organizations are just in catch-up mode with trying to hire, find the right people, get them in place, and then finding the time to train them. So when I look back at these inhibitors in process, I wanted to leave you in each of these areas where I'm sharing with you an observation, some best practices that will be helpful to you in what you are trying to accomplish. So I'll start with just getting a documented process. Hopefully that goes without saying, but really, really important. And two things, again, I mentioned, remember the top of that list were a forecasting and a skills database. So, leading development organizations have this three-part approach to forecasting: business planning, forecasting, and staffing. And in the RFCP training, we talk about this three-part program in the form of long-range strategic planning, annual forecasting, and then the tactical staffing that goes on day to day. And building effective mechanisms of those three things, really, really important. And a properly designed skills database and process via which you maintain those databases. And so, one thing that we did a research report back in, I think it was December of 2018. We published it first quarter last year, but basically there was very clear data that if you define your skills by role, had regular updates by your employee, and conducted proper validation of your employee input data through either SMEs or managers, that your success rate with an effective skills inventory went up considerably, resulting in that. So that's just another good example of a best practice where the data is telling us if you do those three things, you're going to get a much, much better outcome. And then the last thing on this page, of course, certainly is investing in your research managers. Whether you get it from us or you do it yourself, make sure that you're providing good, solid training for these people. I would also mention, by the way, on a lot of these points 8 and 9 here, on best practices, we've got past power-up sessions that are recorded, copies of the decks that are out there on our website. You can get access to them and go through those. And there's a whole lot, again, free information to help you get better in those areas in resource management. Observation number 2, the automation tools are getting better, more is needed. So as it relates to the tools, and again, we've got some great comparative data. The good news here is the data says that, overall, when we looked at, compared to 2 years ago, people are generally getting more happy or more satisfied with their PSA, PPM, or RPM tool. And again, we see that in the marketplaces. The tool vendors are listening. They're listening to the RMI. They're listening to you. And we're clearly seeing improvements. Their release schedules have a lot more focus on resource management. And so you can get a sense for, where things are going. And also, by the way, the number of people that have looked at what's available is going up relative to people that are considering new tools. And by the way, if you've got an older generation tool, we'd strongly suggest you take a hard look at what's available out there in the marketplace today, because today's current generation tools are important. The move to digital transformation is undeniable at this point in time, and is really, really important. One thing I'll point to here that came out of the data was a commitment to people not getting away from spreadsheets. I'll come back to that. We've got some answers there for that as well. Inhibitors, what's wrong with our tools? And so, it's interesting. The trending data says more people saying that the tools lack features. Now, it kind of sounds like it's in conflict with what I said earlier. The tools are getting better. We believe, but by the way, we have really great knowledge of a lot of the various different tools and what they are able to do. As organizations have become more sophisticated in their resource management processes, they're demanding more from those tools, and their feature lists are growing rapidly. And again, the vendors are trying to be responsible for that. Anyway, so key trends, are here. RMOs, again, the growth of those are driving more sophistication, optimization via improved alignment of process with solution configuration. The area for improvement is, have you really configured your PSA or PPM tool properly to support a target process? And then, by the way, integration with actionable data is, we see people aren't paying enough attention in the requirements planning for a new tool relative to how they integrate with the front end and back end systems, and of course, and those sorts of things. So I'll give you some, if you're thinking about a new tool or thinking about how to get a better value out of yours, look at some of this data. So it kind of tells you where your peer group is are having issues, and if they're having issues, maybe perhaps an opportunity for you to avoid those things. Priorities for people relative to fixing things in our tool set. No surprise, skills and forecasting jump out at the top of the list there. So we're clearly seeing that. And then, down here relative to project staffing, the tools are getting better at automated project staffing, although they have a ways to go there. And then reporting, dashboarding, and analytics, still a ways to go there. They're getting better at that, but providing better actionable data is where we're trying to put focus. Is when the vendors are asking us for, what do we need to do better? And we're telling them, give your users more actionable data. Okay. Data analytics. Industry software is, I'll just say, has made it easier to integrate systems front end and back end. And by the way, the integration of that data then gives us the ability to then take and apply BI tools or capabilities that are inherent in our PSA or PP systems to allow us to extract better data through what if scenarios as an example. But the better RMOs have figured out, okay, now that I'm getting better tools, I got a better process, is that I can look at one formulation of here's how I'm going to try to match supply and demand. And by the way, maybe I ought to look at some other what if scenarios to see if I can produce better outcomes by massaging how I'm matching supply and demand. And the tools are getting better at the ability to do this. And by the way, you can't do this with just a tool. If you try to do this, just buy a tool thinking it's going to fix your RM problem, it just never works that way. I think most of you know that. So we strongly recommend you build a great process and then get a tool that adequately enables your processes in a way that gives you the data so that you can start to look at how I can get better at these things. So a couple of areas that we think can help you with improvement is letting your process requirements drive a use case driven selection process. So one of the things we see, our parent company, RTM Consulting, it does through our PS Digital Services, does PSA, PPM consulting. One of the things we find is too many organizations focus on the tool without the process instead of properly building a list of process requirements. And so we would really suggest you do a couple things. Is you build a list of what are the things that the tool has to do, what are the outcomes that I need to get, and then build use cases. Here's my data, here's how I want to use it, here's how the workflows that I want to run my business with. Okay, now Mr. PSA or PPM vendor, show me how my data, my process, and my workflow will be accommodated with your tool. And that's what we mean by the use cases. I know many of you probably already know that, but we don't see enough people doing that, and it drives a much, much better outcome when you're looking for a new tool. And of course, also, what are the metrics that I need, relative to whether it's project performance, utilization, customer satisfaction, or labor cost per hour, or whatever it happens to be. Know what you intend to measure, the outcomes you want, and make sure your tool is really properly set up to be able to do this. By the way, we've got some great power up information in our toolkit here that you can get through the RMI website as well as through the RTM Consulting website. And again, RTM Consulting being the parent company to the Institute. Okay, observation number 3. Sourcing strategies are evolving. As the talent wars have heated up, good RM can play an important role in sourcing and employee engagement. Now, I said earlier, RM is part of the solution to better employee engagement. It's certainly not all the solution. Good HR practices, the need for those things haven't gone away. There's certainly even more focus on those things today with a tighter labor market. So it's really, really important that we be good at these things. And we published a report just not too long ago on the whole area of sourcing. Where do you get people, whether it's internally or third parties, and the interesting thing jumped off the page, probably no surprise, is 95% of organizations have some challenges to difficult or very difficult with finding adequate human capital to run our project-based businesses. So really, really important. And then, of course, the organizations are following an all-in approach to how they are going about sourcing people, some traditional methods of employee recruiting and third parties, and then some, I'll say, I don't know if they're less traditional, but getting more focus into departmental borrowing and escalation. And of course, now there's other methods that we teach in the RMI through our certification program, things like warm pool recruiting that we think are going to become bigger and bigger in your arsenal of things as you're trying to find human capital. This page is really some really important takeaways. Now, I'm guessing that people kind of knew this, but here's the data on how long it takes to find people. And by the way, it's recruiting and the onboarding. First time to first productive day is on average, 8% said I could do it in less than 30 days. I question that, but there are 8% who said that, but 44% said it takes longer than 31 days. That seems likely. And then 33%, another 61 days. And then we got another 15% out here that takes even longer. And so when you can't find people quickly enough, you got a big project came up you didn't anticipate because you just couldn't anticipate it, or you didn't have, it wasn't in your forecast, whatever the reason is, it drives us to third parties. And generally speaking, third parties are more expensive in cost per hour. And so it drives it to them. And here you kind of see how long it takes to wind up a third party on average. And again, you look at this as benchmarking data. You might be better at this, you might be worse at this, but it at least gives you something to map against. Anyway, the point I want to make here earlier, and I'm going to back up to this slide for just a moment, is the whole notion of just-in-time resourcing is just in time of getting the right person in the right place at the right moment in time, just as just-in-time manufacturing did for the manufacturing industry, starting 30, 40 years ago, is how do I get the right part, the right plant capacity in place, not too much, not too little. I got the part not before I need it, not after I need it. And in this case, how do we get human capital aligned with, supply and demand of human capital, not too soon, not too late. And so because those things take time, the further out we can forecast, the better off we can do a job of matching supply and demand. Okay, so tools. This is a little bit of a surprise to us in that organizations still generally, when it comes to identifying gaps and getting far enough out, that people are not as happy with those tools. Now, I'll say that data is, I'll just say, we didn't have the right trending data that we felt comfortable to put that up in front of you, but I'll just say generally, we think that the organizations are getting better at this, but forecasting is a place where things need to get better. And so, what if projections are really, really important here. Your ability to handle various talent categories, whether employees or third parties, minimal spreadsheet dependency is really, really important, and data analysis, reporting, and dashboarding. So those are the four things that we know people are asking for that'll make these, help flip these responses the next time we run this thing. So some best practices I thought I would share with you here is, one I mentioned earlier, which is, letting your process requirements drive a use case driven process for automation tools. So I'll just repeat that again, is we see similar organizations that fail at this, get a tool and it's not working. And by the way, sometimes the tool is capable, we just haven't configured it right. We haven't, matched that well with our intended target processes. And so you got to get better at doing that. And then processes should be developed to better balance, priorities of work I got to get done with the objectives that I have for employee engagement. How do I help do a better job of employee retention by helping people see that our algorithms incorporate into our allocation methods, the things that are important to our people relative to their careers, their wants and desires. And the tools are getting better at this, and the processes are getting better at this, but this is an area where there's more focus is still needed. Now, okay, observation number 4, RMOs are here to stay. So that the data is, interesting is that 2 years ago at the first symposium, I presented a future megatrends for resource management. I have 5 things, and I'll refer to a few of these as I go through the balance of this presentation. But at that time, RMOs were, I'll just say, minority organizations have that big jump over the last couple of years. We've seen that the much bigger focus on organizations going to an RMO. So today is if you haven't put in place an RMO, or at least the concept of a function of what a resource management office does, then you're behind the curve now in the organization. And we're seeing that, by the way, throughout those domains, professional services, marketing agencies, enterprise IT, and product development organizations. Although I will say product or professional consulting services organizations got running down the path of building RMOs much earlier than the other domains do, but the other organizations we see are playing catch up pretty fast here. So if you're considering building an RMO, this piece of data here hopefully should be helpful to you. It shows you the primary responsibilities that organizations are assigning to their RMOs, relative to RM processes, process development and governance, project assignments, demand planning, supply planning. Those are things we naturally would expect to see there. Some prior research we did basically says, don't let your RMO become an administrative function. It's a big waste of money and time. The whole idea is to drive the RMO for some centralization of that process to drive more effective utilization of the total resources of the enterprise. And then from our primary success metrics, you can see here what people set as metrics. Staffing timeliness really jumps off the page. In addition to resource utilization, no surprise there. Forecasting accuracy becoming much more important, and growing. We're seeing employee retention really a shift of more collaboration than ever between service delivery teams who are employing some kind of a resource management process that's paying better attention to employee engagement aspects of project allocation, and working with the HR organizations who still have those traditional roles of trying to apply good HR practices across the organization. So a couple of best practices that we like to focus on here is, the essence of this section was, build an RMO. It's really important to your organizations. And if you haven't gotten one, if you're of any size of an organization, 20, 25, 30 people or more, at least the functional aspect of an RMO. But if you're 100, 200, 300 people or more in your service delivery organizations, an RMO is absolutely mission critical today. And then the centralization of resource management with transparent visibility to enterprise-wide available resources is a critical component. We've got clear data from numerous research reports that said if you centralize a view to all of the resources in an organization and let the RMO be very much involved in how those resources get allocated to projects, you'll produce much better utilization, better project performance, and a variety of other things. So it doesn't mean very clearly that all these people report to one person. There's still a role for the delivery managers out there that are managing the careers and HR aspects of people. But in a more centralized RMO environment, things start to change in how we think about looking at supply and demand and how we allocate resources. And there's clear data that says when you do this, you get better business outcomes. All right, I'm going to finish with my fifth observation. The need for and potential applications for artificial intelligence is growing. Clearly, AI is coming, right? We're seeing it applied in lots of areas of our lives and our businesses. Digital transformation is growing really fast. A lot going on in this space. And resource management, I can think of a million different places. I think some of you know I'm working on a book in this area, and we're working on some stuff for advanced RM class. We're going to talk about strategic use of data for better resource management to produce better business outcomes. AR is going to play an important role in that. And that's one of the 5 things that I called out 2 years ago, is that comprehensive data analytics assisted by AR will be the next big thing for PSA, PPM, and RPM vendors. We see lots of focus from vendors in this area. And the upside for doing that is absolutely huge for organizations like yourselves. Okay, so some data here. No surprise, 11% are using some kind of artificial intelligence. Now, we didn't have really good trending data here. I will tell you that just based on what we've seen and what we've been watching over the last 4 years, 11% we think is a big jump from where it was 3 or 4 years ago, where it was either very small, infinitesimal, or, by the way, there was some in use, but the tools really weren't that good. We're starting to see some really good stuff come out, and no surprise, forecasting is where people are saying, I'm struggling with this. You heard my data earlier. I need to get better at that. I need more help from my tool vendor. Now, really important, I say, forecasting is really process centric. It's not a tool, it's a process. And so one of the things we teach in the certification program is numerous of ways to go about building a better forecast. We focus on that 3-part forecast of long range strategic, your annual forecast, and then your tactical day-to-day forecasting and how that works. Many of you may have your own ideas on doing this, but building a better forecast, if you can't get a good 3 to 6 month line of sight to what your human capital needs are, when it takes 2 or 3 or 4 months to find a person, get them up and running, how can you do that effectively if you don't have a good view to the future? The staffing of projects, of course, is seeing more emphasis from the vendors. This is an area where we think the PSA PPM tools have got to get better. And that said, how do I do a better job of letting the tool be more involved in helping me pick the most appropriate resource, maybe recommending 70–80% of my project staffing assignments and letting us in the RMO just focus on the finalization of these things. But we think over the next 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to see a big shift toward both process and automation to make that job even easier for organizations. So AR is going to play a big role. So anyway, with that, so those are the 5 observations that are really, really important. So now I pointed out areas, and I would encourage people again we've got 12 or 13 research reports. Go out to the RMI site, join, and again, it's free, and get access to those research reports, to power up things, and see how you can start getting data, benchmark information, so that you can get focused on your process improvement. We got a ton of tools that are sitting out there. We got market research I referred to, white papers, collaboration tools, so you can work with various other organizations, our power up sessions, which are recorded out there, events like this. And then, as I mentioned, our certification graduates have an even broader toolkit, and all of this stuff from the Institute is free. So as a wrap up, and then we're going to take questions, and I encourage you to hang around because I see a lot of questions in a panel. We'll take as many of those as we possibly can in the time that we have left. But let me just wrap up with a few things. I shared these 4 things, and I'll start with project performance is why, again, lack of RM specific process discipline. Process education is a big area of weakness. Whether you're trying to build whether it's a project management process, a quality process, we all know that better education is really, really important to your business objectives. And so we developed, in 2014, we launched our pilot of our RMCP program for professional certification. It's the only certification program available for resource management that teaches you best practices in this area, gaining access to the RMCP Resource Center, the opportunity to collaborate with your peers. Our student base tells us the bonds that they build with other people and organizations to create the opportunities to call friends. How's this working for you? What are you doing that's different? Is really, really valuable to them, to you. So we have more than 500 companies that have put 1 or more people through this program. Some, by the way, have put hundreds of people through the program. So the great news is, we're seeing huge adoption in this across all the various domains that I mentioned to you before. We teach the certification program in 3 different formats: in class, which at the moment we're obviously under pressure due to COVID-19, but the great news is we have an online schedule with instructor led. We also have on-demand versions of the RMCP training available as well. And depending on what medium you choose, it's between $1,800 and $1,995 per person. We do have early bird discounts for people. If you're a PMP, you can also get PDUs for attending our class. You can see the list there, how many PDUs you get depending on what version of the class you happen to take. So you can do that. And of course, we have our version of professional credit union, professional credit units for certification. And there's a recertification period for that as well. Your materials and testing fee are included in the certification program. Our next in-class version is coming up in August in Cincinnati. You can go to www.resourcemanagement.institute.com and learn more about the programs and when they're available. You can register and pay online through that for either the in-class or the online sessions. And again, I would also mention that we have the on-demand version available 7x24 for $17.95. Okay. Last, before I'm going to go to the Q&A here, is we do have our third annual Resource Management Global Symposium planned for Dallas, September 24th and 25th. We certainly are very cognizant of the issues around COVID-19, so we're watching and monitoring that very carefully. We're planning a backup date in the spring of 2021 should we find ourselves in a position where we're unable to run the event. We are going to provide 100% refunds to people if we have to move it, or the ability to transition to the spring event if we are forced to move it due to COVID-19 issues. Your personal safety obviously important to us, and we're going to be monitoring that very carefully. We're expecting a big crowd at this next event, and last year's event was very well attended. You can get a copy of last year's agenda out there, and we're beginning to populate this year's agenda as we're adding to our speaker list there. So great opportunity to network with your peers, to attend and listen to lots of different speakers. Most of our speakers last year were not from the RMI. They were users who are doing real resource management work. And anyway, with just a terrific event, and a lot of people sharing lots of great information. Okay. I want to, before I start the Q&A, and say thanks to Keyed-In and MavenLink. Can't thank them enough for their support of the RMI and this particular broadcast. And then we'll go to the Q&A session here, and I'll turn it back to Thomas Meredith, our Vice President of Marketing, and who's going to moderate our Q&A session.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for that. Wow, I mean, a good 45 minutes there of some really good content. Appreciate you sharing that with us. We do have questions coming in. We're going to try to get to as many of these as we can, so keep entering those in if you would like. So I'm going to start here, Randy, with one that came in, and she's asking, how do I know when resource management is really working right? So can you kind of give us some thoughts on what does good look like?
It's a great question, right? Because as people are trying to formulate, what are the business outcomes we're really looking for? Yeah, when I step back from it all, just make it real simple, is when you can predictably and consistently have supply and demand of your project-based work with the human capital to do that work, without big gaps or big surpluses, you've arrived with a great resource management process. Because if you're doing that, you don't have wasted dollars with surplus, and you don't have projects that are going undone, whether internal or external projects, because you didn't have enough of the right kind of people to do your work. There's a whole bunch of information out there in research reports on metrics and things people are measuring and all those kinds of things. But when I step back from it again, if you can get to consistent supply and demand matching, that's what good looks like to us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to jump in here. I've had a few questions come in about the research reports, who's responding to them, kind of the levels inside of an organization of the folks who respond to these surveys, which we then produce our research reports from. The respondents, they cover a broad range from professional services, consulting services, enterprise IT, product development organizations, marketing agencies, and the folks that are taking these surveys, they range from executive level all the way down, yes, to resource managers. So it's a broad range of folks taking those. So I wanted to mention that as that came in.
Hey, Thomas, and I would add too that the research reports that are coming out now, we're providing that data as to what were the levels of people that did it. We weren't collecting that data a while back. So it's just this, I think this upcoming one, and maybe the last research report we're going to start reporting is who actually answered the question, not only the domain, but were they a resource manager, an executive, VP of services delivery or whatever it happened to be. So, okay,
Right.
Great question. All right, let's keep going.
Yep, I got one here. Understanding that many organizations are behind the curve on resource management, where do you assess the ownership of the change management that has to occur across an organization to be successful? Is it resource managers or more traditional business operations, PSA admin roles?
Well, so where I would go with that one is to the resource management office concept. Is we think the organizations, particularly the larger organizations, have got to build a function around resource management, just as they did for project management for PMOs. We think PMOs are really, really important. Those aren't going away, but resource management offices the concept is growing really fast. We think that's where the ownership should be. Now, if you don't call it an RMO, that's fine. Call it whatever you want, but somebody needs to own the process and the execution of those processes, and then the cross-functional players in the enterprise that are necessary for resource management to be successful. So HR plays an important role because they're helping us find people and the retention programs and those sorts of things. Business operations is important, right? Because they're running the ops of how do I run the service delivery operations and those kinds of things. So there's got to be collaboration, but we think that the change management ought to be driven out of the resource management office in collaboration with the cross-functional organizations that need to be working with them. By the way, sales is another one, right? Is you can't do good forecasting without good collaboration with sales. So,
right.
Anyway, that's my thoughts there.
This one came in. She says, "I'm new to resourcing. How do you measure project performance, especially when you don't have a PM tool or a time tracking system? Do you all have a resource process book on resource management?"
So, yeah, I mentioned a couple things. So project performance is, people measured in different ways. And I'll just, because our parent company, which I'm the CEO of as well, is when we run projects, we look at a lot of different things. So the ability to start a project when the client wants it to start, finish it when the client wants it to start is pretty important. So project timeliness and project cost. Project profitability. Every time you start a project, generally, and by the way, whether it's serving an external client, if you're a professional service organization or a marketing agency, or if you're an internal client, enterprise IT, people have an expectation of how long that project's going to, when it's going to start, when it's going to end, the quality of the project, how much it was going to cost. Those are all things that I would be measuring as far as project performance. And then, by the way, as I mentioned before, we got clear data, and I've been a big believer in this for a long time. I wrote a white paper, probably 2008, 2009. It was called the Project Performance Paradox. It's still out on our website, by the way, and the data is basically still true. As most projects don't fail because of a project management process failure. They fail because they simply couldn't get the right person with the right skills in the right place at the right time. I'm very, very passionate about that, and when people fix that with a better RM process, combine it with a good PM process and a quality process, you get better business outcomes. And so, anyway, those are some of the things that I'd be measuring to look at the overall effectiveness of the organization.
Okay. I'm going to jump in on this one here. We had a couple of questions asking, what is this Power Up? That quite simply is just our quarterly webinar series. It's an educational webinar series we run. Once we conduct those each quarter, we do record those and add them to the website. So that when Randy was mentioning the Power Up sessions, those are quarterly 30-minute webinar where we address a resource management topic, and we do kind of a deep dive on it. So just wanted to mention that to some new folks on the line who did not know. Randy, this one came in. I'll send this one over to you. I am looking for some information on capacity modeling and what are some best practices for building these.
I would refer you to look at our Power Up library and our white papers. We've got both white paper stuff on this, and we got several broadcasts we've done on capacity planning, forecasting, supply and demand planning. You'll find there's a wealth of information out on the RMI website on that topic. Because again, forecasting, capacity planning, one of those areas where most organizations struggle. So we've over-rotated in focus on research in that area and putting out topical reports and power-ups and those sorts of things. By the way, the symposium, great. We had a ton of speakers on this topic last year, and that did a great job of here's how we're handling forecasting, capacity planning in our organization, and across both enterprise IT, product development, marketing agencies, PS, lots of good examples for that.
Okay. I got another one here. Do you have data on how companies plan for bench resources? For example, do you include a bench in your forecast to allow for training, just-in-time resourcing?
I was looking at that question here. It's a terrific question. The short answer is yes. We think building of a bench. Matter of fact, the first white paper I wrote in, I think it was 2007, maybe 2008, and it's out on our website. Just-in-time resourcing Part 1 and Part 2. And you'll see that we cover the concept of a bench. We think a bench is important, and it's important, by the way, not because I'm trying to create surplus of people, but because of the ability to quickly react to unforeseen project needs, whether internal or external. We think the concept of a bench is important. Now, if you're a 20-person organization, having a bench is probably just not economically possible. But I would contend you, if you had 300, 400, 500 people, I could show you how having a bench of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people actually is a better produces better business outcomes than not having any bench at all. So we do think the concept of some bench is an important construct of this. And by what we do cover the bench in resource management certified professional training for organizations. Great question.
Yep. Another one similar to the certification program. He asks, nowadays, companies expect the resource managers to have the fair understanding. Hold on, my question just went away. The fair understanding of operations and reporting as well. Do you cover this in your certification program?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Here, this one just came in. We are a small consulting firm with 15 to 20 consultants. Our teams operate under 5 practice areas. How can we efficiently manage our resources allocation without having to set up a separate RMO?
So what I would tell you is that you should develop the concept of an RMO and have that somebody in the organization own the function and I'll just say decentralize the execution of a common standardized practices to how you're going to allocate people to work. And so this is a place where, by the way, the benefit arguably to a small organization is even bigger because they have to, excuse the expression, use it up and wear it out. You can't afford to be a 20-person organization and have people sitting on a bench. It's just, I know the economics of that. And so a better RM is absolutely critical to the profitability of those organizations. And so, yeah, you don't have to have a person who's got RMO that's my department, but the functional aspects of what an RMO does and a resource management process, so that somebody owns that and that we train people in the organization is here's how we're going to do resource management, supply and demand planning, allocation of people to work, how we're going to do it forward as an organization, but then decentralize the centralization of that.
Okay. We are right, getting close to the top of the hour. This wasn't a question, it was more of a comment, and I just thought I would share it with it. It was when we were talking about project failures, and he could not agree more. He says most of the time it's not project processes, it's resourcing. Amen. So kind of what we're preaching as well here. All right. Okay, I think we are right here at the top of the hour. I do want to respect everybody's time. We have a few questions there that we can answer offline afterwards. But again, as I said, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And again, I want to say thank you to everyone for spending an hour on the line talking with us today. I know some lives are being changed and rearranged and upside down, and it's not our usual routine. So we really appreciate you taking some time to spend with us as we shared the state of resource management in 2020. Randy, thanks. Appreciate your time as well. Any last words?
No, well, thanks again to Keaton and MavenLink for sponsoring, and thank all of you for attending. Again, record attendance here. And if you haven't joined the RMI, check us out. And thanks to all of our members for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Yep, I echo that as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. We'll end the webinar.